So before we start, I should probably go ahead and put a bit of a disclaimer here in that if depression and addiction are sensitive topics for you, um, there's an exit button. There's other videos you can watch. Keep in mind that this isn't for everyone. This is not something that everyone can either one handle or two they want to listen to. This is here for those who are willing to listen to what I have to say on these topics. So, without further ado, let's go back to 2015. 2015 was a normal year in my childhood. Just kind of, once again, going through the motions. It was going to be a new year. I was going to be going into a new grade in the fall, and that was always exciting for me. The rest of the year, I was just, at least building up to that, I was just, doing what I was normally doing. Being homeschooled by my mother, playing video games on my Wii's by myself, or just playing Minecraft with some of my other friends who were also homeschooled. And, sometimes it wasn't easy with some family drama going on in the background, but I didn't think much of it. And it wasn't until about August 2015 that it seemed as if my whole childhood had shattered before my eyes. It was around that year that my entire sort of perspective of everything had kind of shattered. And what caused that was what I would probably say probably something that was inevitable, but it was whenever my parents split up. And that was hard for me because I had to live in a state where with family, which that was nice, but it's like I wasn't with my friends. I didn't have my room. I didn't have quite a few different things. And my entire life from that point onward was a bit different. Around October, we had to return because laws and stuff. And we had to live in some very interesting situations in order to just be able to simply be there and have to work 50-50 custody situations. And those weren't fun. Having to go back and forth between homes, especially at the age of 11, was a bit rough. And not nearly as rough as it was going to get. We'll skip a bit forward to 2017. And so it was at this time that my mom started working at a school. It was right around that time, just before actually, that I had stumbled upon something that most kids like to joke about these days, which is pornography. And it pains for me to see a bunch of jokes like this. Like, there are some things that I am perfectly okay with joking about, but pornography is one of those things that it's a genuine thing that people struggle with on a day-to-day basis. And it's something that I struggled with for a long time. And 2017 was whenever I just stumbled upon it. That's the best way that I could describe it, is I stumbled upon it. I didn't know what it was, but something in me was just like, I'm gonna look at that again. And so I kept going back and never said a word to anyone. And I think just shortly after my family found out, and they were a little bit condescending of just like, it's like, don't you know it's bad? And it's like, no, I didn't. Which that condescendence did not help my situation, nor did it help my emotional state at all whatsoever. It was later that year that a certain series of events happened that led me up to getting a girlfriend. And so having to kind of juggle those two things was a bit rough, on top of already struggling with schoolwork and whatnot. And so, trailing this, from, I believe, the start of 2011, I had a friend group of which we'll call the home squad because we were all homeschoolers. And the group consisted of, I can't remember if the group in total was about 6 people, including myself. And all of them were female except for me. But we were all connected through our love of Minecraft. Trust me, it's very much important. So all throughout 2017 and into 2018, I was juggling a girlfriend on top of struggling with pornography. And at this point was whenever I was talking to a counselor about it, and he was trying to help me get out of it, which none of the methods really worked. They helped some, but didn't really work. 2018 was whenever things got pretty bad. And that was whenever I first, I would say, truly experienced depression in such a drastic way. And the reason why I say this is because that was whenever me and my girlfriend broke up. At that point, it was already October, and that was whenever I started getting really depressed. And at this time, Spring also got depressed. Yay! It's just a cycle of depression. And then she started showing some signs of that she liked me. Like, I want to say at one point she did say, like, had you not just broken up with someone, I would probably date you. And which, you know, me, kind of having grown up, been rejected most of my life, was just like, oh, yo, that sounds cool. And that was my dream for the next year and a half. Obviously, that didn't go very well. In 2019, me and my brother decided to do something that was, well, we basically refused to swap places, or rather just go over to my dad's house for like 6 months. And this happened right before I broke up with my girlfriend. And so it was around February that we were basically told, go back. And we couldn't refuse. And so we ended up going back, and that didn't help. And so just dealing with so many emotions all at once, trying to help Spring with her depression while also struggling with my own, and just going through a whole bunch of different things. And so then I was like stuck in depression. And it just sucked. And well, I continued doing pornography even more. It pretty much went from doing it like 1 to maybe 3 times a day to like 5 to 6 during this time. Because I was trying to find just something to make me feel better when everything that I tried to do made me feel only worse. And it really didn't help because every single time that I fell for this temptation, I guess is what you could call it, is that I could tell my brother at the time was just like, what the frick, just stop doing it. But it's like, it's something that sucks you in. If you, or you know someone that's in addiction, then they know how much of a life sucker it is. Because it's like you want to do almost nothing but participate in whatever it is that you're addicted to. And pornography is even worse because of the psychological things that it does to your brain. Because it warps your sense of, like, what a relationship truly looks like. So then it transforms your mind into just, like obviously they'll have, like, different stories, I guess, of, like, how they will, you know, participate in such actions. But, and so then you'll start thinking about, like, oh, maybe this will happen to me. I'm laughing about it, but it's one of those laughs where it's just like, So there were only, eventually, it was actually around the time that we started going back that I had found a song that would be a key component in breaking me out of depression. And it's a song by a EDM artist called Boss Fight, and the song is called No Sleep. And it's basically a song about depression. That's basically what it is. It's just a song about depression and it sucking because depression just sucks. And I would I remember I would just lay in bed in my room at my dad's and just have that song on loop and just lay there. Just be completely just almost absent-minded. But yeah, that's the best way that I could describe it, is just absent-minded, just almost as if I felt nothing. I felt absolutely nothing inside of me at all whatsoever. And it was getting to a point that not even pornography would help at all. Even whenever I would, go after it so hard, it wouldn't do anything for me. It would barely give anything back, and, well, I was getting to a point where I'm like, what do I do? I just didn't know what to do. And, I would say that we kind of started to come back up around April, because then two things happened in April. One of those things is that my friend Spring gave me a letter as an encouragement, which me at the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, it meant so much to me that I literally hung it on my wall. That's how much it meant to me. Because, I think at this point I was 14, almost 15. And so this was just a thing that I'm just wow. At that time, she was, being really supportive and really helpful. And another thing, and, I heard, at this point, I heard a voice that I had never heard before. And I'll say, I know now, but back then I didn't. And I heard a voice that pretty much said, you're not alone in this. You are not the only one who is feeling depressed and down in the dumps. And there are some people who are even going through something that could be worse than what you're going through. And yet they're going strong. So keep at it. And that to me was such a big encouragement that I stopped listening to No Sleep. That right then and there was just I'm done with this song. This song is so depressing. I don't want to hear it anymore. And so I stopped listening to it. And so those two things combined, really helped me. But if anything, it would probably be just that realization, I guess, of just that, I'm not alone. It's because it's true. It's like those words had, full truth to them. That's what truly helped me get out of it. And so I think that the rest of 2019 kind of carried on somewhat normally, if that makes sense. Oh, no, wait, no it didn't. Of course it didn't. Because pornography kept getting worse and worse and worse. It's I didn't really fully get out of depression. I just kept going and going and going and going. Yeah, it wasn't great. There were two major events that happened in 2019. One of them was a youth camp, and the other was me meeting someone who is become very important to the rest of my life. So we'll start with the first one, the youth camp. I will say that this youth camp was extraordinary. I went to it in 2018, and it was pretty good. I liked it. I didn't get a whole lot from it, sadly. I wish I got more from it, but I didn't. So I went back to it in 2019 in the summer. And keep in mind, this is a church camp. So I went there, and, well, I felt really on fire for the Lord after that. But immediately as soon as I got back and got home, guess what I decided to do? Yup, that's right. Please myself with mind-numbingly videos on the internet of naked people. Why did I describe it in such a cheerful way? Why? Oh, Lord help me. One thing that happened at this camp was that, so, this is a little weird, but every time that they would, like, have an offering or something, and you gave a certain amount, you would get a little trinket. Just a little something. It wouldn't be something big, but just like little something of just like, hey, thank you for giving. Here's a little something in return. And one of the nights that I had given, they had their entire album from that year. Because they had like a whole theme and everything. And they wrote an entire album dedicated to that theme. And so I got it. And, well, as soon as I got home, well, not as soon, but whenever I could, I went and put in the code and, well, listened to the album, of course. It's like I was listening through it, and I'm like, okay, this sounds pretty good. And then one song came on, and that song was called Chains Fall. And Chains Fall, oh man, it was a really good song. That's all I have to say. It was just a really, really good song. I don't think there's anything else that I could say on it. And so while I was listening to it, just something in me was just like, it felt alive. I just felt alive from it, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I love this. It's like, I want more of this. Why can't I have more of this? So I started listening to it whenever I felt tempted to go and watch pornography, and well, anytime I did, and I kept like listening to it or just like engaging in it, it's like the temptation would still be there, but it felt less. And it's like, wow, this, like, I actually feel alive while listening to this song. Like, it was incredible. It was surreal. Like, I didn't even have words for it at the time. And yet, just something in me was just like, this is good. Like, this is actually good. Oh, yeah. And then the second thing was me meeting my friend David. David, if you're watching, I love you. And so, David, at the time, well, I had essentially met him because, once again, yay, homeschoolers. I managed to get his, his Discord and Steam and whatnot, and then we would just play games. And I didn't really develop much of a relationship with him until way later down the line. Yeah, remember whenever I said there were only 2 major things that happened in 2019? Yeah, I forgot that there was a third. And so, this third one, happened around September. To give months to the other 2, I went to the camp around July, and discovered the song just after camp. And then I met David in January of 2019. Both of those events were in 2019. And this happened in September, whenever it was our last night at my dad's for the week. And so, the entire year, I was just kind of sitting here like, what do I want to do with my life? Because it's like, I'm in high school, and it's like, I haven't thought about, like, an actual career. And quite a few people that I knew were like, why not become a veterinarian since you love pets so much? Or just animals in general. And, well, I was looking at it, and I'm just like, I don't know. It was like something about it just didn't really pique my interest. And then I decided, like, maybe I could become a judge. And, well, again, it was one of those things where I did the research, and for some reason, it just didn't feel right. It wasn't until, like, late at night, at my dad's, that I decided to do something that I never really did before. I decided I was going to ask God what he wanted me to do with my life. And so I just prayed and was just like, you know, I just like, what is it that you want me to do with my life? Because I have no idea. And that night I had a dream. And in that dream, I guess I'll pretty much like describe it. Basically, I was much older. I say much older. I wasn't like in my 30s. But I was a couple years older, and it was me and my dad, and we lived out in the middle of nowhere, pretty much. Like, I don't know. We were surrounded by forests, and we lived in an apartment complex. In the dream, obviously, we got in a bit of a heated debate, and then out of fear, I ran and into the forest, and then I came out on the other side, and it was the camp that I had gone to twice. And I stayed there, and I was housed there for about 6 months. And then it was like almost like a time skip had happened. And then after that time skip of 6 months, I saw myself on the stage in their main sanctuary. Basically, I saw myself in two positions. One in the front, singing and leading worship. And the second one, and the second part, was that I saw myself on the drums. So, but more emphasis was on the drums. And it's like, I didn't realize until the next night that I'm like, wait, like, I was just lying in bed thinking about it. David was on my top bunk. And then I just straight up say out loud, like, wait, that was a Holy Spirit dream. And then he's like, what? And I'm like, the dream I had last night, it was from God. It was... And it's like everything started to click, and I'm like, oh, okay. Finally, we can get into 2020, which most people would argue, or actually a lot of people would agree, it was the absolute worst year of their lives, because, you know, COVID and all that stuff. Me? I can see where they're coming from. But I wouldn't say it was the worst year. For me, at least. In fact, I would actually say it was my best year ever. And here's why I'll explain. So keep in mind, obviously, with me talking about depression and addiction, is that, well, coming up on 2020, and that's whenever everyone got depression. Because of isolation and protocols and all this stuff. And so what happened at the very beginning of 2020 was that, well, we had a youth service, and at the end, the youth pastor gave a sort of challenge for the year, and that was to just spend like 7 minutes a day talking with God. In which, like, something in me was like, I kind of want to try that. I want to see how that would work. Like, that night, I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to try it. And I just started talking. And at that moment, like, it felt as if his presence came into the room. And I'm just like, wow, this is awesome. I'm going to do this again. And so I kept doing it and kept doing it. And I would just talk about whatever I wanted. Like, I felt so awkward at first. But at a certain point, I'm just like, I don't care. I just kept doing it and kept doing it. And it was incredible. And I just love doing it. Unfortunately, come February, around middle of February, was whenever I kind of fell into a bit of a hole. And, well, I didn't make any further developments on my relationship with God. At least for the next couple of months, because I had entered into a very similar phase to pornography, So it was around February that I was still in, so the reason why I wasn't super duper good friends with David was because he had a friend that I related to a lot more and would pretty much talk to over David. I know, that sounds not very cool, but trust me, there's a redemption arc coming, don't worry. And so it was during this time that he had introduced me to a game. That game ended up, after a little while. I'm like, well, yeah, these people are kind of cool. And then he's like, well, would you like to join this Discord server? And I'm like, sure, alright. And so then I joined it, and it turns out, they're all role-playing people. And so then I decided, well, I guess I'll join in with it. It seems kind of fun anyways. And so then it went from just me, like, just being like, oh yeah, I just want to check out what this community looks like. To me literally kind of, like, feeding off of these sorts of role plays just for happiness. Because it went from, like, cool stories to, like, romance plots. And, well, with my past experience, that was already salt on the wound. So, to avoid such a temptation was practically impossible. And so, I kept up with this cycle, for a little bit. Until a few things started to happen. Again, it's... a lot of what has happened in my life has either been, like, just small steps up, or small steps down. With occasional, like, maybe some drops or, like, some boosts upwards. So this started just kind of becoming a trend. And I started becoming attached to some of those people, because it's like, wow, these people actually genuinely care for me. Which some of them were, but most of it was false. All they wanted was the same thing that I wanted, which was just good feelings and the feeling that just wanted to belong, if that makes sense. So pretty much just rinse and repeat this for several months. I say several months. It was probably only like 3 or 4. Had several crushes, got rejected by dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And, well, it felt like as if, I would start up a conversation with someone, or they would start up a conversation with me. It would be all fine and dandy, and then we would start role-playing, start slowly dipping into a romance plot, and then eventually would get to a point where they would just start ignoring me. And, well, that wasn't cool. And so then I was just kind of like, why? But in most cases. But then there were a few things that started to draw me out of this hole that I had essentially dug for myself. It felt, instead of me, like, leaving this community, it was more so as if I felt I was being pushed out, to say the least. And so one of them was one unique encounter that went way too far, and then, had, obviously, you know, the whole, you know, being rejected by dozens and dozens of people so many times. Like, if I had a nickel for every time that I was left on red by someone from that community, and never got a response, like, ever, I would probably have $5. Which doesn't sound like much, but that's a nickel. So, yeah. Here's the thing. I'm not exaggerating with this number. I'm being for real. If I were to give an actual number, it wouldn't be too far off. And then the final one was another encounter that I had, which was very similar, but the person on the other end, like, tried to force it, essentially. And, it turns out that after I had reported them, because they were acting very, very odd and just downright inappropriate. And so, this is in a Discord server. So I contacted the owner of the Discord server, which we'll just call, call her Quartz. So I contacted Quartz, and she was able to, you know, like, help me. And then she started asking me questions, and, obviously, you know, she banned them, and she pretty much told me, like, don't contact this guy, block him right now. Don't talk to him, don't reply to him, don't say anything. And I'm like, alright. And so, well, obviously, me being a smart, intelligent lad at this point, I did. Here was the shocker. So she asked me, like, what all did he say? Like, about his own information. And I said, well, he said he was 17, and that he lived in Minnesota. And then she is just like, that is completely false. I'm like, what? And then she's like, that person is 23 and lives in Canada. And I'm like, what the frick? I'm just like, that's creepy. And then of course he was part of the same community, and so yeah, that was one thing that pushed me out. And now, I had mentioned before that I had a relationship. I started building a relationship with the Lord, or God, the Lord. I will call him many different things. So whenever each new one comes up, I will say, like, oh yeah, whenever I use this term, I am referring to God, or Jesus, or the Holy Spirit, or yeah, you'll know. So anyways, there were a couple things that had pulled me towards him. And I believe he allowed these things to kind of, like, happen. All these, like, bad experiences to happen. So then I would leave that and then be closer with him. And so the night that I had a one strange encounter, not the one I just mentioned, the one before, which happened on May 20th. That night, like no joke, like, it messed me up so bad that I felt sick. And it was a Wednesday night, so I didn't go to church that night. So my brother comes home from it, and then hands me a forum. What it was a forum, like an application forum for the youth's worship team. Which, if you aren't already picking up the pieces, you would know, hey, that's the thing that the Lord's calling you to. Hey. And which it's like, yeah, you're right. And I started filling it out. And then it gets to a point where I'm just like, okay. It gets to a point where it pulls out a Bible verse. And it asks, is this how you're living your life? And I look at it, and I'm just like, no, it's not. And it was hard. It was so hard to deal with that reality of just, this isn't what he wants me to do. So I removed myself from the community entirely. I got rid of most of the friends that had pretty much, like, pushed me out. Which, to keep it into perspective, so I had friends on Reddit and on Discord. And on Discord alone, I had about 73 friends. Whenever I went through and purged a bunch of them, I had 18 friends left on Discord. 18. There were only 3 people from the community that I kept. And they were the only ones that, 1, responded, and 2, were actually pretty cool. They were pretty chill. They weren't into role-playing and all that stuff, which is great. And so, this finally loops around. So, through that whole experience, I finally started, like, pursuing my relationship with God. And then at one point, something in me was just like, I want to take this seriously. Like, I don't just want to live my life, just, you know, trudging through, just trying to make it. It's like, I want to live. I want to thrive. And in the Bible, it essentially says, if you wish, Jesus actually states, like, those who wish to follow me, they must deny themselves daily, take up their cross and follow him. It sounds like as if I've gone way off track, but trust me, like, this applies. This applies to depression and pornography. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm sorry it's taking so long. It wasn't until about, I want to say either late June or early July, something in me was just like, you need to talk to your youth pastor about this. And me being like, this dude is like, he doesn't know anything about this community. I don't think he knows anything about role-playing. Like, I was terrified, but I eventually mustered up the strength to do it. And he was able to take me through some things. And I essentially was kind of, like, set free from that bondage. That helped me, like, better get over it. And then it wasn't until about early July that things really started to change. And so, in early July, we had a lock-in for our youth. Right beforehand, we had a mini service at someone's house. And then, which pretty much it was just like a little bit of worship and then a message. And then we would participate in the lock-in activities back at the church. And so, whenever we had, whenever we got to the message, he was talking about pretty much what I had mentioned earlier. About, you know, surrendering everything to God. Like, surrendering fully, committing your entire life solely to God. Like, that's something that's scary. So then, something in me afterwards was just like, I want to do that. And then he was also, like, preaching the message of, like, he'll set you free from, like, dark things, like anxiety, fear. And I'm just sitting here, like, and then I think he mentioned, like, addiction. And I'm like, oh! At that point, I'm just like, you got me hooked. Sign me up for this service. Plus, I had already experienced a little bit of a taste of it. Because whenever I started, like, a relationship with God, like, I couldn't avoid a day, or, like, even just a couple hours without looking at a piece of porn. With having pursued God in an actual full-on relationship, I was able to make it set, like, a few days without looking at it. Or without masturbating. That was what was shocking. It was just like, what? Like, it didn't even feel like a few days. I'm just like, wait. It's like, wait, how long has it been? It was just shocking, pretty much. To say the least. So I decided, like, hey, I'm going to give my life over to Jesus. Why not? Let's do it. And there were 2 other people that did the same. One of them was my brother, and the friend of whose house that we were at. And fortunately, they had a pool. And so then we had baptisms there. From then on, I'm like, I want to break free from this. I want out, and I'm going to pursue God in order to do it. And that was the last day I had ever seen a piece of pornography. It was July 8th, 2020. And today's current date is January 13th, 2023. And as for depression, that started slowly fading too. as I started pursuing God more and more and more. So once I started doing that, then I realized that he was the only thing that could truly fill me. Not any girlfriends, not any piece of pornography, not any roleplay, not any person or anything could give me the level of satisfaction that Jesus has given me. And even to this day, I have yet to experience anything that has even come close. And well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I could talk about on that. But here's the essentially the main takeaway from all of this that I have experienced. Is that I went through depression and tried so many different things trying to get out of it. Talking with friends, playing video games, listening to music that made me just feel something. I went with pornography. I went with role-playing. I tried daydreams. I tried finding a community of people that were also trying to get out of the same thing that I was. There was girlfriends, there was actual friends, there was all these different things. And yet, despite all of those things, there was only one piece of hope that I had that I hadn't tried, and that was giving my life over to Jesus Christ and allowing him to take that place of where I tried to put so many other puzzle pieces. And it wasn't until I did that that I started seeing freedom. I started seeing freedom in places that I didn't even know I needed freedom in. Like, it's insane. I'll go more into my... Because this is kind of like a bit of my testimony, if that makes sense. But I'll go more into, like, my actual testimony at a later time. But this is something that I wanted to just bring up. And, again, I really hope that someone gets a takeaway from this. Like, obviously, like, I am not sitting here trying to beat you over the head with the Bible saying, fall in love with Jesus. Because that is something that, one, you have to pursue, and two, something, well, yeah, it's mostly just, actually, I would say it's just your choice. Which is something that I've been saying since, well, kind of the start of this channel, mainly. Because so many people, I see it on Instagram all the time, is that Christians everywhere will try and be like, you gotta turn to Jesus, you gotta turn to Jesus. But, which, that's not a bad message. At least I like to believe so. But, the thing is that you have to make that choice. You have to pursue that relationship. What I'm trying to tell you is that if you believe that there is no way out for your depression, your addiction, or just your anxiety or even fear, there is one way. And I hope that based on the stories that I've given you, that you'll at least give it a chance. I mean, like, at least give it a chance. Like, you never know what can happen. Like, there's nothing that you could really, like, lose from trying to have a relationship with Jesus, as far as I know. So it's kind of just, like, my attitude whenever I went forward with, like, pursuing God is just, like, what have I got to lose at this point? And even though, like, here's another thing, I might as well go a bit more in depth with my testimony, is that even though I had to give up so much, I gained so much more. Like the friends that I have, the just not even just material things, but just like my emotional status and even my spiritual status has changed drastically since the beginning of 2020 compared to now. And even though it's not always been a smooth road, because I've had some bumps in the road, which I'll get into, but it's always something that I come back to. It's always something that I come back to, and I say, it's like this is the one thing that actually makes me feel alive and true. And I even managed to, like, find myself, if that makes sense. I was able to actually understand, like, who I am through this relationship with Jesus. And it's like there's so many things that I've learned and have been showed because of this. And I never would have expected the drastic turn of my life, or, like, of this magnitude, like, ever. And yet, because I decided to make one decision and commit to it, and just be like, what else have I got to lose? So much of my life has changed. And, like, that previous friend group that I had mentioned before, I'm no longer, like, friends with them. But I do have a friend group that is so encouraging and so kind and so loving. And they're just the absolute amazing group of people that I've ever met. You know who you are, and you know you're watching this video.
Hi, Nathan.
Well, that's kind of all I had to say on this, mainly. Like I said what I wanted to say, and, well, that's about it. So if you're still listening to this, I applaud you for having stuck this long. I have no idea how long this is gonna turn out. It'll probably be over an hour, if I had to guess. I just wanted to say thank you for just listening and just being able to hear me out, if that makes sense. This is something that a lot of people struggle with, even daily. It's not easy to go through these things, but I'm essentially here to tell you that there's hope. There is a way. There is a hope. And the only way through that is through Jesus Christ. If you want to stay and try and do other things, I wouldn't encourage it. But obviously I'm not gonna come at people and just be like, no, you're not allowed to. You must take this route. No. Because again, every person has a choice. I just ask that you may be wise in your choosing how you do it. So, that said, I bid you adieu, and I hope you have an awesome day.